Live. This is Mary Grace coming to you on a beautiful kind of snowy night here in Central Virginia. It is what's today? The 18th. Wow. January 18th, 2023. And we are is it the 17th? 18th.
No, 18th,
Okay.
24.
The 20, it's a good thing I've got somebody else here. Let's try this again. I'm just going to rewind and I'm going to say it's the 18th of January, 2024. I'm Mary Grace. This is Grace Time TV. We're here on the Mary Grace Media Network, and I have a guest with me here. I'm going to chat to you for just a second before I introduce my guest because I want everybody to be on board. I want you to tag people. I want you to let people know that we have this show coming because I'm very excited about what we're doing tonight. I am launching a new podcast series just specifically focused on wellness. We're going to have our other shows that have to do with politics and current events and things like that. As you know, I like to feature certain guests on a regular basis. And so now I have a guest who's going to be coming to speak to us on a regular basis and also answer some of your questions. And so I'm going to introduce to you my friend and a friend who was introduced to me by another friend of our show, Clay Clark. This is Dr. Troy Spurrill. He is the CEO and founder of Synapse, which is a center for health and healing. This is kind of cool because it's based in Minnesota, but you guys have a big telemedicine component to what you do, which is why we're sharing you with the whole world. So welcome, Dr. Troy. It's great to have you here. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I very much appreciate it.
It was good to chat with you yesterday. You are coming to us from a remote location which shall not be disclosed.
That's right.
You're he's incognito, which explains
I am.
the cap and the interesting background and the vacation garb. So, in case he doesn't look like he's dressed like a doctor, it's because he's actually on vacation and he's coming to us from vacation. So, next time we have a show, it'll look a little bit different.
Yes.
But hey, we're excited to have this to get this conversation going and to get this rolling. The first thing that I want to get you to explain to people is a little bit of your background and then just a little bit about your clinic because it's different and I think that people are going to get excited about what you offer there.
Yeah, absolutely. So the short version is that I grew up in Canada, and so I experienced the healthcare system in Canada and the good and the bad. And I kind of fell through the hoops there. And um, long story short, I was always going to enter into medical school and became very dismayed when I didn't learn health in medical school. I went to my the doctors there. I believe it or not, I played Division 1 rugby up in Canada, so I was an athlete and a high level at one point, and had aspirations of just being really in top shape. And I was undersized. I was one of the small guys, and so I wanted to learn about health. And my professor said, "Well, you got into the wrong field if you want to learn about health." And I was learning to become a medical doctor. So I actually
Wow.
transferred to a different career. I went down a different path, I should say, more natural. Uh, got my degree in science, my science degree with a focus on molecular biology, microbiology. Got certified as a kinesiologist, became a chiropractor, and then did a functional neurology diplomate program.
Wow.
And so I ended up with 12 years of degrees and a lot of learning,
Mhm.
but it was mostly the stuff I learned from some of my mentors and outside of school that I ended up practicing. And my final degree was in functional medicine. And so I was not allowed to open up the type of clinic that I wanted to in Canada. So I was trained here in the United States, down in Texas, in Minnesota mostly. And yeah, I knew I always wanted to do functional medicine.
Mhm.
And functional medicine is more of just assessing how the body is supposed to work and then
Okay.
reestablishing those key communication systems. And our my foundational belief, they don't teach this part in functional medicine, but I'm a Christian by faith, and so my foundational belief is that God created us to heal. He really did. And so if we can just restore the systems mentally, chemically, and physically, then we allow the internal processes and mechanisms to actually heal us. So if you can identify dysfunction early on, you can help prevent symptoms and disease. And so we've been treating people that way for 25 years. And I started off in a small 250 square foot office
Hmm.
by myself and with one other practitioner, and we were the front desk and the practitioners.
Right.
And now we're well over. We've got 20 different people in the office: medical doctors, nurses, nurse practitioners, chiropractors. We do IV therapy, a lot of nutrition, diet, lifestyle counseling,
Hmm.
a lot of education, which is one of the reasons why I'm here with you now. I really, really just want to teach people
Yeah.
how to recognize what's good for them, what's good choices for them, and how to be healthy. Because the bottom line is, most people, especially in North America, are really living too short and dying too long. They don't have the quality of life that they really need.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I think that we spend more per capita on healthcare,
Yeah.
whether it's insurance, medications, things like that. But we don't have the best lifespan, and we also have pretty high infant mortality
Yes.
in this country, and so it is concerning. I think that our system is set up to maintain sickness as opposed to foster wellness. And I believe that one of the best things to come out of the last 4 years, starting in 2020, is that it really pulled back the curtain on the medical industrial complex, is what I call it.
Yeah.
And the insurance industry, the pharmaceutical industry. I think that there's a lot of heartbreak and anguish that came out of this, but also a lot of revelation. And this is what, as a Christian, we always pray for wisdom and
Yeah.
revelation. And I believe that people who are really looking for the silver lining and the nuggets of truth and wisdom in what we had happening over the past few years will be able to see that and grab hold of it. One of the outcomes is that people have a lot of questions
Yeah.
and they're looking for alternatives. They're looking for where they can go if they no longer want to be in that system that they have relied on for so long. And, everybody's in different stages of understanding and
Yeah.
awareness. And so this is why I'm excited to be going forward having these conversations with you so that people can know what their alternatives are, whether they choose to work with you and your clinic or they choose to find a counterpart locally or a combination. I think that it would be really empowering for people to have those options. And that's one thing that I love to do on the show is to give people options, to tell them the truth about what's out there and to bring in experts who can just tell it to them straight. So it's very exciting.
Yes,
um,
absolutely.
so,
Your the word you use there, empowering, is very, very key, because that's the goal. That is the goal.
mhm. Right, because we want people to take personal responsibility for their health, right?
Yes.
So can you give us some examples of like I know that there's no typical scenario, but let's say a lot of my listeners are more mature.
Yep.
They've had families. In some cases, they're grandparents, empty nesters, whatever. They're facing unique types of health crises or challenges, a lot of which sometimes are hormonal. Um, maybe not. But what's an example of somebody who might call into your office and do a discovery call and just try to figure out if they're a good candidate for what you offer there? Can
So
you walk us through?
absolutely, yeah. So we get calls pretty much across the board, because you're right.
Mm-hmm.
People are searching, and we saw that too. There's a blessing that's coming out of COVID, and
Mm-hmm.
the veil has been pulled back quite a
Yeah.
bit. And so a lot of the questions that I get asked on different shows is, how do we ever trust the healthcare system again?
Mm-hmm.
And we have to earn it back. And so this is part of it. So we get people that'll call in. I'll give you an example. we get a lot of people calling in because of memory issues. And so they may have like
Mm,
cognitive challenges, and they may have, um, whether it be not even full blown Alzheimer's or dementia, but they're
mm,
like, ever since COVID, I've got a little bit of memory issues or loss of taste, smell, different things like that. Or they've got high blood pressure and they just don't trust the pharmaceutical industry anymore. They don't trust the high blood pressure medication they're on. And they're just asking, do you have alternatives? Well, the answer
okay.
to both of those is yes. We've been working, like I said, 25, 30 years. Our
Mm,
cardiovascular program, I'll give you one example. We use technology in our clinic called the EndoPad. It comes from Israel, but it measures the arterial stiffness and the endothelial, the lining of the arteries for damage. And it
mm,
also measures how your
oh,
nervous system might be contributing to your blood vessels. So, stress or fight or flight scenarios, if they're triggering your high blood pressure. And we have right now, we're outperforming the Mayo Clinic and the U of M, the two other facilities in town in Minnesota that have the same technology using natural therapeutics. And we're well over 95% of our patients get off all of their blood pressure medications and are managing their cardiovascular dysfunction. And it's through diet, lifestyle, but also looking at
mm-hmm.
root causes, like what's setting this up. And sometimes it's a
Okay.
deficiency, and sometimes it's an underlying hidden small infection, or many times it's like a gut problem caused by reactions to food. Or we have a general saying, if God made it, it's good. If man changed it, beware. And man has changed our food
Mm-hmm.
supply a lot.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
that really plays into it. So we identify that leads us down the path of eventually helping wean people off their meds and getting them help.
It's interesting. For some reason, I have this image of when you're talking about the root cause. Um, I, I I read a book once about Leonardo da Vinci, and one of the reasons that he was such a good sculptor is that he actually went to the morgue and
Yes.
did autopsies on the bodies, which apparently was against the law at the time. But he wanted to have an understanding of the musculature underneath the skin, and that's how he was able to create such realistic looking sculptures. And I think that, when you talk about getting to the root cause, I just get this image of you and your team kind of just taking a, a microscope, and,
Yeah.
and or a telescope, and going deep into the body, and looking at all of the things that contribute to what it is that's happening. And it would never occur to me to think that somebody might be having high blood pressure because of an underlying allergy, or maybe a parasite,
Yeah.
or something that they were exposed to, because we've been told all this time that it's salt, that people shouldn't be
Yes.
eating salt. But you're saying something different. And I wanted to
Absolutely.
ask you too. Yeah, I wanted to ask you too, because we were talking the other day about my dad, and how, I've been working with his medical team to get him off of what was at one time 11 prescriptions, and he's 86. And one of the things that I noticed was that his balance was really affected, specifically by what I determined to be the high blood pressure medicine. When you start working with patients and you're able to get them, safely off of these prescriptions, right? Nobody's going cold turkey. I just want
No.
to be clear about that.
Yes.
And also, I want to give a disclaimer that we're not recommending any course of treatment right now. We're giving examples of
Yeah.
things that other people have experienced. We do encourage you to call in and set up a call. I'm actually going to put it up on the screen here. If this is resonating with you, we want you to make the call, or to go to the website. It's right there. official, I'm going to read it out to you, official synapse.com, the number 651-209-9906. You can do that. Just go and give them a call. The first consultation, there's no charge. So, anyway, that disclaimer's out of the way. But just give us an example. Like when you have somebody who comes in and they're on a bunch of prescriptions, what types of changes do you see just by transitioning them off of that once you identify the underlying cause?
So a lot of times it's slow. So people need to just know that you have to go slow for many things. But we know that if people are on one medication, there's a 10% chance of a side effect. Two medications, 50% chance of a side effect. Three or more, there's a 100% chance of at least one side effect. So we have to be able to discern their current symptoms, what's it actually coming
Mm-hmm.
from. Many people think that their current symptoms are coming because their disease process is getting worse, when in fact, a lot of times it's from the medications itself. And so that's one of the
Interesting.
key
Yeah.
things, that we just do one thing at a time. So we start to measure
Okay.
what's not working with their diet,
Mm-hmm.
what are they not absorbing, what are they deficient
Mm-hmm.
in,
Mm-hmm.
then start building that foundation. Then we measure
Mm-hmm.
things like, are they sleeping
Oops.
properly? And so if
I
there's
lost you.
sleep,
Sorry.
oh, that back there we go.
I'm gonna get you. I'm gonna highlight you.
Oh,
There you
there we
go.
go.
Okay, that's better.
And things like sleep are foundational, and most people don't realize that there's 102 different sleep disorders. And so we're looking at the foundational stuff, restoring sleep. So then their system starts to function better. When we start seeing their system function better, we work with their prescribing physicians to start to wean off of certain medications. Sometimes they don't no longer trust their physicians, and our medical doctors will start working with them. But we start that process slowly, and we look at their top symptoms and which medications have a side effect linked with that. And so you said it beautifully, because dizziness and balance issues are one of the biggest challenge with side effects of blood pressure medications. And more people get hurt from falls from side effects of blood pressure medication than they do the actual blood pressure issues. And it's becoming more and more of it's more on people's radar right now, that there is some concerns. We shouldn't be on this pharmaceutical approach for everything. It shouldn't be a frontline therapy. In fact, I don't know if your listeners know this, but the number one cause of death in the United States generally is heart disease. Number two, cancer. Number three, medications. The number three cause of death in the United
Wow.
States is iatrogenic death. 50% of those are from side effects of medications, and 50% are from mistakes made by the medical doctors, whether it be prescription or other factors.
Wow.
That's a high number.
Wow.
And so it can be
Yeah.
easily reduced by just restoring and working on the foundational principles of how the body is supposed to work. And we're not against
Yeah.
medications, but we're against the improper use of medications.
Right, right. And this is something that I noticed with my dad is when I started getting him off of these medications, he was briefly back on the blood pressure medication, a small dose. But it was so crazy because we were walking around the block and I could see him just starting to wobble. I mean, it was so obvious because he was an athlete growing up, and he's pretty sure-footed for the most part. Like I've seen him have some incredible recoveries, if he loses his footings and things. But this was a completely different phenomenon. I mean, I was concerned that I was going to have to like sit him down somewhere and go get the car and go get him,
Yeah.
just walking around the block. And it really was an aha moment for me because I thought, how many elderly people are falling and breaking bones and having surgeries and hospitalizations and eventually pneumonia from being in the hospital or other secondary infections because of medication. And the medical industry is chalking it up to just old age, losing your balance, because we're told when you get to a certain age that these things start to happen.
Yeah.
And it really just struck me in such a critical way. And that's one of the reasons that I'm so passionate about having people like you to talk to my listeners, because if it's happening to my dad, it's happening to a lot of people who are listening today.
Oh, millions.
And
Yeah, millions.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and I want, like I said, I want to empower people to take a closer look, to have the tools and the resources, and whenever I partner with somebody, it's after I have taken the time to check them out. I found you through Clay Clark, and he's so well connected.
Yeah.
He, because of his uh, work as an entrepreneur and as a business coach, he is incredibly well connected, but he also knows how to vet businesses and to all in all kinds of industries. And so that's one of the reasons that I'm working with you, is because of that connection. And that's why I feel really comfortable telling my listeners, hey, go check this out. Now, can you explain, I have people listening from all over the world, and obviously, they can't all come to Minnesota,
Yeah.
especially right now with all the blizzards. But
That's right.
but the Great White North is really not that accessible right now. But what is it like for somebody who decides that they want to call you? They maybe they're in another country, or they're in another part of America. What's the process like for them if they want to pursue a relationship with you as their provider?
It's a great question. First thing I'd like to comment on is the fact that I actually moved to Minnesota from Winnipeg, Canada, because it was so much warmer. So I want to lead with that. And then
Oh, wow.
the second thing is we actually treat people from all 50 states and from 12 different countries. So our patients from, I'll give an example. We have a patient from Japan. They come about once every 3 years at this point, and we do some
Okay.
in-house assessments, but then everything is communicated via our chat or virtual like this, and then we find out what they need, and then we find out
Hmm.
who's local that can do what's needed. So we
Okay.
find that there's a lot of good people from all over the world, but they don't know what to
Hmm.
do. Some of them do, but they're very small businesses that have worked outside of the systems, because our
Yeah.
systems, our healthcare systems, for the most part, are broken. There are some actually decent ones around the world. And I'm just going to put this out here too. My goal is to change the healthcare system in the United States and Canada, just to improve on both. We're going to take the best from
Hmm.
the traditional model and the best from functional medicine, because I've been doing it very successfully for 30 years. We were a word of mouth clinic.
Hmm.
I didn't start doing more interviews and things like that until COVID came up, and we were full. We had people from 12 different countries at that point who were just word of mouth referrals. And so it only happens, that only happens if you're getting results. You can't keep your doors open if you don't get results within our industry when you're
Yeah.
outside of the traditional model.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
basically pretty easy to get established. Everything is done virtually. For the
Hmm.
people that can fly out to Minnesota once, that helps us a
Hmm.
ton, because we have a lot of in-house testing and treatments that are very unique. But
Hmm.
we will do our best to also find someone local. But we have people that are
Okay.
very remote, and so we're able to work with them. And
Yeah.
we've developed a lot of education, a lot of virtual programs to help
Hmm.
guide people through it. And our core programs for people who want to make some significant change, we have a 6-month program where every week we give you information, and it's like going
Hmm.
back to school, but you're the subject. So we're
Okay.
investigating you. We have you do certain
Yeah.
things. We teach you certain things, and then with careful observation, reporting back and tracking, we have a whole online system to track the data. We can actually start to identify where the problems are, what foods are affecting you, even sleep disorders. There's so many tools that we have available now. So we're very, very consistent with our out of town, out of state, and out of country patients as far as being able to help them.
So it really is, you really are focused on helping people to take responsibility, to take personal responsibility, and to gain an understanding of this amazing thing that is our body, right?
Yes.
Um, yeah, so it's really fascinating, and I think that um, one of the things that I've noticed, in our country is that in America we have gotten really used to the idea of having insurance um, be the safety net, right?
Yeah.
That people think, okay, I'm going to go do this because it's covered by insurance, right? And so they actually, I feel like people kind of neglect their bodies because they just think, well, I've got insurance. And, I think of it like, what if I did that to my car? What if car insurance covered all of the wear and tear and the tires and the windshield wiper blades and the oil change and the antifreeze? People would run their cars into the ground and
Yes.
think, "Oh, I've got insurance covers it." But it doesn't. Insurance covers like if you wreck your car.
Yeah.
And I feel like in America and probably in Canada too, if we had that type of situation where people had to be more proactive and had to check the fluids and
Yes.
check the air in the tires, and not rely on insurance, they might be more proactive. And what I'm getting from you is that that's really where you take people, is to take them out of that insurance covers it mindset to I'm my own best advocate and I have a team now that's helping me to learn and make the best changes.
That's a
How do you like that analogy?
yeah, I love that analogy. That's bang on. I've never used it. I'm going to steal it. That's how good
Okay.
it is.
Okay.
So that yeah,
Okay,
that's a
good.
perfect analogy. And we literally call our program a proactive program because you're either preparing or you're
Mm.
repairing. And our current
Okay.
healthcare system is a disease management system. It's not a healthcare system. Canada's is not a healthcare system either. And so it's a disease management system. They wait for you to have a disease, and then they use drugs, surgery, or PT in some cases to actually
Mhm.
then treat it. And I'll give you an example. I have a patient who was went to the Mayo Clinic in Minnesota, and I saw a question online asking if we're a naturopath, and we're not considered a naturopath. We're functional medicine doctors, chiropractors. There's MDs, nurse practitioners. So it's more functional medicine, but we use a lot of natural approaches. So it's a little bit different. But we had this
Okay.
patient who was referred to us by another patient. She had been to Mayo Clinic. Mayo Clinic says it looks like you're going to get MS, but you don't have it yet. Come back when you have it, and we have a program for you. And so,
That sounds like what they did with COVID. Like,
what?
come back when you're
Yes,
dying.
yes, I
Oh my
yes,
goodness.
I have another COVID Mayo story here in a little bit, but she legitimately couldn't walk. She lost the ability to walk. We found out the root cause was
Wow.
damage to her liver, which we suspect came from a combination of glyphosate, which is the active ingredient in Roundup,
Okay.
and
Okay.
aspartame. She drank just a lot of aspartame and was lived in
Oh.
farming community and had a lot of the glyphosate. When we supported her liver, she could walk and she was symptom free. So to the point she
Glyphosate is Roundup, you guys.
yes, Roundup.
Roundup.
And it's in a lot of our genetically modified food. So she came in a wheelchair. When we supported her liver, within a week she could walk. So she not just walk, but she was able to start running again, and she ran in a marathon. She was good. When she went back to Mayo, they said get off of the liver support that we had done, the diet and liver support, because they wanted to assess her again. And within a week she was back into the wheelchair, which tells you that there's real damage there. And then they did almost $100,000 worth of testing. They did turn over every stone. They did a really good job of investigating everything. Couldn't find anything because it wasn't in their wheelhouse. And by the end of it, they said go back on your regimen that we had her on, and that's what
Really?
we can do. Yeah. So by the end, they agreed with what we had done because they couldn't find anything. There was nothing in their world, but it's because they don't investigate things like glyphosate. They don't investigate
Mhm.
things like aspartame issues that can cause dysfunction with certain people. And so we're now going on well over 12 years where we've been able to keep her out of a wheelchair. If she goes off her regimen right now, she doesn't end up in a wheelchair but she starts to feel shaky and stuff. So she's still improving. Her liver
Yeah.
is healing
Yeah.
over the years here. So that's a good example. And I'm just going to say this.
And so it was from aspartame and
Yeah,
what was the other thing? I was answering a phone line
aspartame
when
and
you said that,
glyphosate. So
but
it was a bad combination.
oh,
That's what we
okay.
suspect because
Okay.
those are the levels that were really high. And
Mhm.
there's a
Mhm.
very particular type of acid that gets created in the body when your aspartame gets overloaded. And
Wow.
so hers was a good 10 times the upper limit. And so that and glyphosate was also a very, very high. And glyphosate, there is some research out there that shows that it can affect your liver in particular and the lining of your gut
Mhm.
quite a bit. So
That's interesting, and that's on it's in everything. I mean, it's everywhere. You go to Lowe's and there's pallets of Roundup,
yeah,
right? And so it's just very interesting. So many things that are happening are just out there, um, being thrown at us. The way
yeah,
that the foods are farmed, and this is one of the reasons that I promote our superfoods. I'm going to put the QR code up for that because a lot
yep,
of people I always forget, but the superfoods is important because there's actually it's all non-GMO. It's grown without any of those additives. So if you go to superfoodreset.com, you're going to get some alternatives, at least to get started
yep,
on, cleaning up your diet that you can't go wrong with the superfoods. Superfoodreset.com. There's a promo code there. You'll save over $120 on a 90-day supply if you use that link and get the promo code. So let's go back though to talking about what you guys are doing because somebody was just asking, how do you clean up the glyphosate? How do you get rid of it? But we'll come back to questions in just a
yeah,
minute. I want to stay, let's spend about 10 more minutes talking about just kind of what you guys do and some other scenarios. You had a Mayo story about during COVID. So let's hear that because Mayo Clinic has just this worldwide renown as the the premium healthcare disease management in the world.
yeah.
But what happened? Tell us.
Well, so I'm going to share two quick stories. And Mayo Clinic was very, very elite back in the 70s. They started with the right idea. They will be back to the right idea. I know I've spoken with some insiders. I know what they're doing, and so their heart's in the right place, and they're getting there. But we have treated
Okay.
well over 200 Mayo failures. I'm going to call it. And so a lot of people that slip through the cracks there are really, we do well with them because Mayo Clinic is very good at finding a lot of different things. I still refer people to Mayo Clinic, but I've had kind of some rough experiences with them. The first one was many, many years ago. I was on Fox News for solving the mystery illness patient of the month. And they came and interviewed
Wow,
me. And
congratulations.
yeah, yeah, thanks. But this was where my contempt for media started, though. It wasn't a good experience because they came. The reporter said, "This is amazing what you guys are doing," and he was just so impressed. And the day that the piece was to be put on the air, it was about this girl who they called her the bubble girl. She'd go outside and she'd feel like the wind was stabbing her, like she'd being stabbed, so she couldn't play with her
Hmm.
friends or anything. And she had been through the Mayo Clinic system, and I diagnosed her with a form of RSD. It's a sympathetic dystrophy. It's basically a sensory disorder, a neurologic one, but I found that the culprit was
Okay.
in the gut. And so I started working on the gut. I said it's going to take about 3 months for us to find out if we can make a difference. Well, sure enough, right about the 3 month mark, her symptoms just changed on pretty much overnight. Woke up pain free,
Hmm.
and they did a story on her playing outside with her friends, and everything went well. And they came and interviewed me for 20 minutes and said there'll be about 2 to 5 minutes airing that night. They want to do a special. The reporter called me the day it aired, and he said, "I'm really sorry. My producer knows the head of Mayo. It made Mayo look bad that a small clinic like yours was able to fix what they couldn't." So they changed the story.
Yeah.
And so that was my first wake up call. And then I
Yeah.
thought I was going to start working with Mayo. Instead, I got a letter basically saying,
Cease and
mind your
desist.
credentials. Yeah. basically it was not good job. It was like stay out of our way. That type of
Yeah.
thing. So then COVID came around, and I I have a full time researcher. I read everything in the beginning as it came out, and so I saw COVID very differently. Our patient base did great with COVID. We had little, I don't want to say zero problems, but we had little problems. Even our 95 breathed through it because they were all equipped.
Wow.
They did well. We
Yeah.
knew that if you had good vitamin D levels, if you had good intracellular zinc levels, if you nebulized with iodine, if you used ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine, then anti-inflammatories like steroids and then anticoagulants, you're going to do great. So all of a sudden we read Pierre McCullough. He had a similar, he read the research same as us. So our
Yeah.
protocol was about 90% of what Pierre McCullough's was. So of course there was a lot of back and forth early on with COVID, and I was expressing my opinion. It was the first time in my career that I started getting like backlash from people who I'm just going to say were watching CNN or something like that, where they were believing something that I'm
Yeah.
like, they said follow the science, but they weren't reading the science. And so I
Yeah.
I tried to debate the doctors at Mayo, and
Yeah.
no one would take me up on it. One guy started, and then
Yeah.
it was very obvious within 20 minutes he had never read the research and didn't know what was going on. So it was very, very sad. And I have a lot of friends who are medical doctors who are great people, and I have a lot of respect for them. I know they're overworked. I know the doctors don't have time to actually sit down and read a lot of it. But the problem is they were trusting people that were untrustworthy.
Mhm.
And so
Yeah.
the Mayo Clinic, I still have a lot of respect for, but my eyes are open. I used to hold them in
Right.
such high regard, and I realized very, very quickly that there's no other way to say it, but they were brainwashed through this whole COVID thing.
Well, and there's also so much money tied to the insurance industry and the pharmaceutical industry that a lot of decisions, I believe, are made based on that,
Yeah,
unfortunately. And it's interesting that you got that sort of cease and desist because the functional medicine clinic that I go to in my town is competing in some ways against a big level one trauma center, and they've they've received some hate mail from them
yeah,
and some lawyer letters, and it was interesting because it had to do with their logo, because they were infringing on some similar colors and wording,
yeah,
and so, and it was just, yeah, kind of like, yeah, you're coming up with solutions to things that we couldn't solve, similar kind of thing.
yeah, yeah.
um yeah, but there's a lot of egos involved as
There
well,
is. Yeah.
right? So listen, to my listeners, you guys have some good questions here. We're getting mostly listeners who are commenting on Facebook. If you're on YouTube, if you're on Rumble, if you're on Twitter, X, any of the other platforms, what I wanted to encourage you to do is to go to my website. First of all, get on my mailing list. Go to marygracemedia.com. Get on the email list so that you don't miss any episodes of any shows, because I will send out an email before I post a show, before I go live. But also, go to my website and go and send me an email, because I want to get your questions. When we come back for another episode, I want people to be ready to have some questions. So if there's something that we missed today, a question about what they do, the types of things they treat, that kind of things. There's not going to be any diagnosis happening here on the show, or addressing people's specific personal medical needs, obviously for privacy reasons and all kinds of liability. But, uh, Dr. Spurrill loves answering your questions and teaching people. In fact, you actually have been on the radio for years. And
Yes.
so some of our listeners might actually have encountered you before. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so locally in the Twin Cities, I've been on Faith Radio on Susie Larson's show for 7 years, the longest returning guest. And I absolutely love it. She first asked me to go on her radio program, and I said
Hmm.
no because I had that experience with Fox News. I had a similar experience
Yeah.
with NBC, and where they just kind of yeah, just it wasn't a good experience, not high integrity. So I was concerned,
Yeah.
but Susie was a faith-based radio show that was truly interested in health, and she's been amazing. She's a remarkable human being with a great program and just a drive to help people. And so that was good for me to experience that still
Hmm.
existed, because that's been my heart for a long time. Just teach people
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
help people become the better version of themselves. And my mission statement, I wrote it on my wall 20 years ago: to become a worldwide agent of change in the fields of healthcare and human potential. And so I declared it a
Wow.
long time ago, and it's
Hmm.
happening right
Hmm.
now. But yeah, 7 years on that radio show, and I've just started speaking out now. Clay has encouraged me. I've been helping a lot of people. We've worked with people from all walks of life, professional athletes, Olympic athletes, other people that Clay works with, and so he told me, you've got to start doing more podcasts and start getting your message out, because I want to change our healthcare
Yeah.
system. I want to bring
Yeah.
the best out there. And I saw someone mention Peter McCullough, just how the mainstream media has treated him. I want people to really hear this. Peter McCullough is the second most published medical doctor in US history. I had lunch with him the day before he testified before Congress, and he explained to us how he sat down with the people at the CDC and the NIH when COVID came out. So there was just a small table of 5 people.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that tells you how much they respected him. He was the first medical doctor outside of the group that they called. So whatever you're seeing on MSM and Facebook, do not believe it, because when they wanted information, they called Dr. McCullough first. He was the first one. And at that meeting, Dr. McCullough came prepared with a treatment recommendation, and they decided not to go with it. And they said, we're going to wait for a vaccine instead. And he said that he could tell, again, they had not read any of the research. These are the people who
Yeah.
ultimately made the decision. And so he's brilliant. He dissected the science very quickly. I rely on him heavily because he can actually read research very, very much. So I just
Hmm.
wanted to put that out there for the
Yeah.
people that
Yeah.
were seeing that, because mainstream media, like we've said, just hasn't done us any favors all through COVID there. And it's just been that was like I
No.
said, a rough time, but a huge blessing, because
Yeah.
it's actually collapsing our healthcare industry. Not only, I'll give you an example. The radio show I did that you asked about led me to
Yeah.
where we are right now, where we have a surgeon, the top trauma surgeon in the state of Minnesota. He probably wouldn't claim that title, but I'm going to give it to him. He asked to do a fellowship under us and learn functional medicine at our clinic, so that he could take it
Amazing.
back and improve the outcomes of surgeries and possibly prevent surgeries. That's the type of doctors we want to work with.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really interesting. When you think about mainstream media right now, any show that you watch, every time they break away to a commercial brought to you by,
Yes.
and all you have to do is insert. Everybody knows the word
Yeah.
because it starts with a P
Yeah.
and ends with an R, and it's crazy, and people still think that they're being told the truth,
Yeah.
even though in the next breath they're being told that this entire segment is paid for
Yeah.
and therefore controlled by that big pharmaceutical company.
Yep.
And so this is where, as an independent uh, podcaster, independent news source provider, I love being able to have the content that is giving people the truth. And so that's why I have you and other people like you on the show, because I want people to be free of that pressure, of that corporate pressure to make a decision because the insurance company pays for it, because this company is giving you a free sample of their pill. Whatever it is that really the reason that you should make it a life altering decision with your health? Is that the basis on which you're going to make that decision? Or is it going to be based on taking a deep dive with a team like Synapse and looking deeper into what's really going on, and finding not only the answers, but hopefully the solutions? That's what I'm all about. That's what motivates me
Yeah, that's
here.
awesome. Just know that the truth will always hold up to scrutiny. It will always hold up to scrutiny. So when you see people pushing fear or just throwing out conspiracy or whatever it is, they're not
Mhm.
scrutinizing it. And in
Yeah.
healthcare, medical doctors used to scrutinize. They used to talk openly about and share ideas. And COVID was the first time publicly that got shut down. And so it opened up a lot of doctors' eyes about how their system has become compromised. I mean, our healthcare system in the United States was
Yeah.
weaponized. Really, around the world, it was weaponized,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Yeah. Do you are you getting are you getting are you having conversations with doctors who know what happened? Are they coming? Are they opening up? Providers, not just doctors, nurses, nurse practitioners, PAs. Are you having more open conversations now around that? What's the overall mood and attitude?
I'm shocked at how little medical doctors have moved on it. I mean, how they've moved a lot more. Nurses, different story. A lot of nurses, respiratory therapists, they saw what was going on and were not on board. I would say the numbers are growing. There were thousands of doctors that organized kind of behind the scenes. And we were talking. I started meeting with a group of doctors monthly to share information, and it was very helpful. And it's led to a
Mm-hmm.
collaboration. It's actually motivated a lot of doctors to make changes. And so I would say there's more doctors that are awake to it. I've heard
Mm-hmm.
some doctors talk openly about how they want to take control back of the hospitals and get the businessmen and women out of there, get the political and financial interests of the pharmaceutical insurance groups out of there. Because again, early in the show, you brought up how insurance really dictates a lot of what the doctors can do. And so we worked outside that system for years because a lot of people don't know there's 102 different diagnosable sleep disorders, but doctors only check for about 5 or 6 of them because that's all insurance will cover. They don't check for the other ones. And so it shouldn't be insurance dictating what we do. It should be what does your body need that determines what
Mm-hmm.
we do. That's the difference.
Mm-hmm. Right. And you actually answered my next question, which was, do you see a possibility that the system can be changed, that doctors and practitioners can get out from under the thumb of big insurance, of big medicine? In my area, there we used to have a what was known as an independent hospital, I guess, and it was great. It was the hospital that you would go to if you didn't have a like a high level trauma, right? And it was a nice little local hospital. And then it got bought out,
Yeah.
and it got bought out by a big corporation that then started buying out other hospitals. And then the next thing you know, you get their mailings that they are now offering insurance, because it's the insurance companies that are buying the hospitals
Yeah.
and controlling what the doctor, and they're also buying the doctor's offices. The doctor's office that we go to, uh, that we've been going to just to establish local care. It's more of a traditional one, but we have a nurse practitioner who's kind of not on board with all the tradition, all of, not traditional, I guess, the mainstream stuff.
Yep.
Anyway, they got bought out, and next thing you know, we're getting paperwork where where my 86-year-old dad is being asked his gender preference, and I'm like,
Yeah.
that it wasn't like this a year ago.
No.
So it's just it's like the corporate machine is controlling that specter. I'm not even going to call it healthcare, right? Disease
No.
management. Um,
Yes.
so what is it going to change? I mean, you're on a mission to change it.
Yes. Yeah, but here's the thing. I've had that on my heart for 30 years. I've never been as hopeful right now, and I'm going to say it this way. I know it's going to change. I'm declaring it's going to change because I'm seeing God equip people just like God equipped David to take down Goliath. This is a David versus Goliath
Yeah.
scenario,
Yeah, it
and
is.
I'm seeing people rise up, and I get goosebumps, and I just sit back and I'm like, man, we're about to see something we've never seen before. It's that obvious to me that I see God's equipping these people. Hearted, healing healers are going to be part of a healthcare system, and they're going to get to do what we should be doing, and they're going to bring God back into healthcare. One of my
Mhm.
surgeon buddies was told that he could no longer pray for his patients as they were en route in the hospital, coming to the hospital, and so stuff like that is going to go away, and we're going
Mhm.
we're going to have a new healthcare system. We're going to see a lot of changes happening when it comes to just how we handle things. I don't think much needs to be changed for urgent care or emergency medicine. That's where actually the systems in Canada, United States in particular, really shine. They're elite when it comes to that. But
Yeah.
chronic disease, the doctors are trying to treat chronic disease like they did infectious disease 100 years ago. They did great with infectious disease. They're trying to use medications in the same way, and it doesn't work that way. The
Mm.
majority of degenerative chronic diseases, heart disease, cancer, diabetes, Alzheimer's, they're all they're all um, need to be managed differently. They're multifactorial, and so you have to take that in. And when they started doing the double-blind placebo-controlled studies, that's when you lost the multifactorial treatments. They completely derailed the entire medical system when they started onboarding that type of research. They're
Interesting.
never going to find the actual results with a double-blind placebo-controlled study because many times you have to do multiple things to actually improve the outcomes.
Interesting. Wow.
Yep.
We have so much we can talk about here. Somebody in the chat just mentioned autoimmune, and that's something that I know that you and your team are really doing a lot of work with.
Yes.
And so I think we'll leave that there because we want to give people time to think about everything that we've talked about today. We are going to come back and have another more conversations. This is just the start of regular conversations with Dr. Troy Spurrill from Synapse. But I think that we'll just put a bookmark on that and come back and talk about autoimmune next time.
Yeah.
How about that? And if you, all of my listeners, if that's something that you have questions about, let's just, I'm writing myself a note. So let's pick that up next time and talk more about that because it seems like everybody has autoimmune issues now. And that's something that you and your team are addressing. So,
Absolutely.
where can everybody find you? How can they reach you? And how does it work if they want to get a consultation? What do they do?
You can just go to our website, officialsynapse.com, and there's just a little form. Fill out 3 lines of information on that form on the front of the page, and then we'll call you and get you onboarded. Or if you're very computer savvy, you can click on the discovery call button again on that front page and just fill it out yourself. And we'll go through and see if you're a good fit for what we do and vice versa. So it's pretty easy to get started and to get information. We have a lot of educational materials and media on our page that you can also look at and try and
Excellent.
educate yourself too.
Excellent. And what's the phone number?
651-209-9906.
Perfect. Yeah. Some people like the phone.
Yeah.
So, thank you everybody for being here. This has just been a fantastic conversation. I have some more shows coming up over the next couple of days. So, thank you again, Dr. Troy Spruill from, I hope I'm saying your name right, Dr. Troy Spruill from Synapse up in Minnesota in the Great White North, although he's not there right now.
That's right.
But it's and that hence the leisure wear. But thank you to all of my listeners. Thank you to everybody for being here, for your great comments and questions. Just keep in mind, start jotting down your questions, because we will take time going forward to do some Q&A at the end of every conversation that we have with Dr. Spurrill. Thank you again, everybody. We will be back. Please share this if you have people that you think will benefit. Everybody that we know is asking, what do I do? Where do I turn for help? Where can I get some answers? I just don't know who to trust anymore with my medical needs. Please go check this out. Synapse, it is officialsynapse.com. Just go check them out, set up a discovery call, and see if it's the right fit for you or a loved one. Everybody have a great evening, and we will see you back here soon.